Welcome back to Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for stage one of the 2025 Tour de France, and as expected, a really, really exciting stage. We do not have boring stages anymore when it's the big guns all lining up together. This episode is brought to you by our show partner, Join Cycling, the flattest stage we've seen in a while to begin a Tour de France. Just 3 Category 1 climbs around the Lille Metropole area in the northeast of France. Good weather conditions in terms of rain, no rain, but maybe wet roads to start, but then windy all day. There's a few one cobbled climb, a few hills, but it's the last 45 Ks is flat pretty much all the way to the finish. But Benji, what forecast do we have?
Well, if you look at the parkour, then we say pancake flat parkour, but it wasn't that simple today. There were quite high winds projected, but like on the edge where you're like, okay, there's echelons possible here, but are people going to pull the echelon? That doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if echelons actually have consequences. The consequence is already there. You've got a very stressful peloton that sprints for every roundabout, every corner, especially the ones where there's open zones behind. We've got roads that might be a bit more narrow, maybe wider roads, but if there's no villages or cities around it, then it's very open and the wind clashes with the riders more. And if it's especially crosswind, cross-tailwind especially, then it can split. And that's why the peloton was super stressed today and why we saw quite a few crashes in the run-up to such moments, but also just in general, a very stressful peloton, which leads to some teams attacking each other on the road, not physically, but verbally about, okay, why are you moving into my position? Stuff like that. Lots to talk about in today's episode, that is for sure. But shall we talk about our Velo Games team first of all? Because we each selected one rider in our Velo Games team that could go in the breakaway today. Who did you pick?
Oh yeah, it's not a free ad, by the way. We were discussing it this morning, and you got to pick like one really bad rider, and you got to try to figure out whether he will be a breakaway merchant on these flat days and gets told to go on the TV breakaway. And one of them that I picked, this is his job, Mathis Lebert for RK. He makes the breakaway. There was also Benjamin Thomas, Jonas Ruch, Bruno Amarel of Decathlon, and Matteo Vercher of Total Energies. And this breakaway didn't make it halfway through the stage. It was given a very short leash of maximum 2 minutes 20 by Alpecin de Koenig. So the teams controlling were them and Lidl. Alpecin put Sylvain Dillier. Lidl put Quinn Simmons. The gap was kept 2:20, but was mainly shorter. They were happy. They basically, you could clearly see they were told by the directors, peg it at 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then that's what happened. The first KOM sprint, though, Benji, was kind of funny because they launched like 2 minutes early and then just all died.
Like, it's not necessarily that we saw like a 200, 300 meter sprint that does all of the KOM. We saw the entire group just attacking each other for the entirety of that first climb, the Côte de Notre Dame de Lorette. And eventually, there's one survivor at the finish line on top of that KOM. It is Benjamin Thomas of Cofidis who takes the 4 points here. So he was virtually in the lead of KOM after that first climb. But then we already see the first 2 crashes in the peloton. We see the stress already being there, to be honest. With 140 kilometers to go, we already see the Visma Leasebikes, the UAEs of the world, trying to fight for that front position, trying to keep themselves in position. Soudal quick step a bit more to the back of the peloton is what I felt like at that phase of the race. And we see a crash. Well, actually, we didn't see it. There was a crash. It happened behind trees on the helicopter view. Filippo Ganna hit the ground. And on top of that, Sean Flynn. So 2 riders hitting the ground, the first crash of this Tour de France. And immediately it looked like Ganna wasn't feeling too great about it. He did get on the bike, but a bit later, he abandoned the race. That is a serious loss for the team of Ineos. He obviously was a candidate for the Stage 5 time trial. But on top of that, that's a super important domestique if you want to keep certain riders safe in flat stages, which we're talking about one right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, these sort of crashes always actually do happen, whether it's a good parkour or not. I mean, guys are just going to come together. But I thought Gannon was okay, actually, Benji, because you're always looking to see, are they crossing their arms after they've crashed? Are they going for their wrist, for their shoulder, for their collarbone? And he didn't seem to be going for any of them, but he was in a lot of pain. And so he must have landed really hard on his back. And then who's the next crash?
Well, the next crashing involved Bissiger and I was going to say Sven Nys for a second there. Thibaut Nys, that would have been a mistake. And we saw a bit of a difference between the two crashes of Gunnar and Naesen there. The fact that Gunnar was drafting behind the team car for 5 seconds before the jury commissaire came to him and said, no, no, no. And then we saw Naesen doing the same, and there was no jury commissaire around. So that's the downside of, on paper, it's a good thing that the jury says to a rider, okay, don't drive behind your own car. But on the other side, there's no consistency here possible.
It was ridiculous. Like, I know what the rules say or whether they're enforced or not, but on stage 1 of the TDF, Ganna's crashed on his back. To be getting barraged by the commissaire straight away like that was really, really tough. And, he had to spend a lot of biscuits to come back in. And then Thibaut Naes, same thing happens, and he's just behind the car, which is also like, yeah, fine, it's a crash. I mean, it just seemed really, really harsh on Ganna. Bissiger also he looked really hurt. He had to sit on a spectator's plastic chair for a bit, and he eventually abandoned the race. So 2 guys are out of the race, Ganna and Bissiger, both time trial specialists, both would have been targeting that 33K absolutely flat TT, both very important for their team in general. Ganna would have probably been hoping for even a reduced sprint on some punchy stage coming up. And they're out. I mean, they prepare for months and they're out. Stage 1 didn't, make it even to the Crosswinds section. So I guess before we get into then the positioning battle and what happened with the breakaway, a word on our show partner, Join Cycling. I just don't have time. That's the most common thing. Join here, we here, I say to myself, have said to myself, and maybe it's the honest thing. You've got commitments, got things going on in your life, your schedule's chaotic, and then guilt creeps in. Because you think you're missing real training. Oh, I didn't do that session, so I may as well just throw it all away if you're trying to stick to a rigid plan. But the truth is, riding when you can counts for a lot, and you just need those rides to count more. It doesn't have to be 5-hour grind fests every single day, and that's where Join comes in. It's smart training that adapts to your life. If you miss a cycling session, Join adjusts. If you've only got 30 minutes, they've got a workout for you, and it makes it count. No guilt, no punishment, just consistent, intelligent training that fits into your actual week, and the availability feature lets you tell Join exactly how much time you've got, and it automatically adjusts your plan around it. So you've got permission to train without the pressure. You just need the right tool. It worked for me. I was that sort of person. If I have a strict plan, miss a couple of days, I just get really demoralized and can lose focus. But yeah, Join Cycling, its adaptability really works for me. Try Join for free using our link in the description, and finally ride in a way that works for you. And after that, the annual plan, you even get a sneaky discount for under €10 a month. Breakaways caught Benji. They tried. There was already crosswinds. You could see the positioning went from 2 minutes to 1:30.
Yep.
Then there was like a reaction to the positioning. It goes to 1 minute.
Yep.
Then Visma pushed. It goes to 30 seconds. Then UAE fully tried to split it at like 100 Ks to go.
Yeah. We saw just the effect coming to its full potential here of what today's stage could be, because UAE did cause a little bit of a split there. We wouldn't classify it as a proper echelon. We had a discussion about the definition of an echelon today, but there was one echelon later in the race that we'll get to later. But about this specific phase, I want to talk about the positioning of each GC team for a second. You've got Visma and UAE being very active at the front of the peloton. We're talking about every roundabout we see Visma Leasebike and UAE fighting to get to that roundabout, to the right side of that roundabout. Because, for example, if a roundabout, the right side is shorter than the left side, the peloton will pace themselves to that accordingly. They will try to get to the good side of the road to take that roundabout by the side that is the fastest. That is the plan of these teams. And we see Visma Leasebike and UAE doing that, but also to every stressful corner, we see the peloton sprint towards that. And, okay, those teams do that. We see a small difference between the two. Visma Leasebike was more as a team in these moments, while there were moments where Pogacar disbanded his team basically at the front, abandoned his teammates, and was even in the Visma train for a second there. So he's still freewheeling between sometimes use the team, sometimes we use my own ability to freewheel to the peloton. That was the Pogacar moves there, but we were also looking at the other teams there. And Remco Evenepoel and Soudal Quickstep were notable in the fact that during this entire last 120 kilometers of the stage, we saw Soudal Quickstep not necessarily taking the forefront of the peloton. And we've had this discussion a lot. The perfect positions to be in when it comes to avoiding crash in the peloton is either bubbled by your team near the front of the peloton, or at the front actually, especially exactly at the front, or at the back with a buffer around you so that you can react to potential crashes ahead of you. The worst place to be is in that washing machine effect of teams trying to move up into position, in doing so, squeezing other people. That's why Roglic in that washing machine effect is a scary rider to look at. But
especially as they don't have the full team committed to him.
Yeah.
If you got one rouleur, say you got 1.5 rouleurs dedicated to you at the start of the stage.
Yeah.
How are they going to keep you in front position in this stage for 200 Ks?
Yeah.
It's literally impossible, except for maybe a Feeney. So your only option then is to be at the back with the rouleur, and then if there is a problem, they're fresh and they can solve it for you.
But about that, that's a whole different situation in a stage like this. In the watch along, we noted live that, okay, Remco Evenepoel, sure, he's choosing not to be at the front of the peloton with his team. They're choosing to take not the back of the peloton, but in like the lower belly of the peloton, I would say, with a buffer around Remco. For crashes, great stuff. For echelon zones, very dangerous position to be in. Because if someone tries to split it at the front, you are doomed. You're fully doomed.
Well, yeah, and that's the problem also for Melier and Van Leeuwenberger, and the whole Quick-Step team just wasn't on it today. I mean, Schachmann was up there for a bit, but then they switched off, and maybe they went into a false sense of security, Benji, because, yeah, the peloton does switch off.
Mate, they listen to Luke.
Yeah, they listen to Luke's European... I don't know what the European model is. I think maybe you're reading a Vogue magazine or something, but the peloton relaxes.
Yeah.
Lenny comes back. Simon Yates was looking a bit suspect in the crosswinds too. Anybody under 60 kgs today, bad day. Except for Vingegaard.
Yeah.
Bad day. Dunbar, Yates brothers, Lenny, you name them, they were struggling today on the pedals and the crosswinds. But it eases off. It comes back. Pollitt came back with the mechanical. Lipovitz comes back from his mechanical.
That mechanical.
And this was after the intermediate. We should do the IS.
Wait, we should talk about the mechanical of Lipovitz first, because you're talking about Lipovitz coming back from a mechanical. To me, it was surprising that Lipovitz has a mechanical during that whole stressful peloton zone before the intermediate sprint. He's riding solo behind the peloton trying to come back. He doesn't necessarily have cars around him at the initial point. And we don't see a Red Bull Bora rider going back to get him. That is insane to me. Because Florian Lipovitz going into this race is a co-leader with Primoz Roglic. If the team does not see that, they are brain dead.
Well, it's because it is coming back. So, like, he's not out of the race, but he has to spend so much extra energy closing this himself. Like, why don't you drop a rider back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really didn't understand it, frankly. We'll get on to more of their resource allocation in a second, Benji, at the finish. But then the intermediate sprint, we saw Little Trek on the left-hand side. Alpecin kind of made a dog's breakfast of it, I would say. Actually, both made a dog's breakfast of it. So Trek dominated. I said they've already got it, no worries. It was, I can't remember, maybe Simmons, Schoens, Sturven, and Consoni.
Yeah.
Luke said Van der Poel looks strange. And I was like, what? And then all of a sudden, Van der Poel basically gets dropped doing the lead out before he'd even started doing it. And he flicks Groves to like go on to Milan's wheel, but they were decelerating because MVP's lead out was so poor.
Yeah, it kind of looked like Little Trek had the upper hand. Stuyven, Consoni, then Milan. And Van der Poel is indeed trying to move Alpecin up, and suddenly he's gone. And then Groves has to figure out, okay, it's too early for me to go. So I need to go to the Milan wheel, but then I would have to launch from that Milan wheel. So then Groves basically decides to put Philipsen in the wheel of Milan, which probably is an okay decision here.
Yeah,
it's not the ideal place to be in, because ideally you've got your own lead
It
out.
also doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Well, a point is a point. But intermediate sprint gets kicked off. There was also a bit of incoherence in the Little Trek train where Stuyven, it felt like we didn't really know which side he wanted to go off at the front.
Consoni was clearly shouting at him, change. Milan was saying change. And Consoni didn't know which side Stern was. And then he changes left. Consoni has to restart his momentum, does 3 seconds. And Milan's like, fuck it, I'll just launch.
Yeah, and he did. And he won the intermediate sprint. And because there was no breakaway left, there's 20 points for Jonathan Milan. And I'm pretty sure that Kokar, who is then on the left side of Milan, Philipsen tried to move in between of them. He couldn't. There was no gap there.
It was a curve, and Kokar accelerates earlier. He takes Milan's wheel fairly.
And Philipsen then puts his hand off his bars, which technically is not allowed during a sprint, but he does it to like give Coquard the pat on the back of like, mate, I'm here, don't kill me.
Yeah.
That kind of vibe.
It wasn't aggressive.
To me, it didn't seem like it was Philipsen trying to shove Coquard out of the way. To me, this was normal in this situation. I'm okay with what Philipsen did there. I'm okay with what Coquard did there. And I think they finished in that order, actually. Milan, Coquard, and Philipsen. Biniam tried to come around on the left side as well, if I recall, but I don't think he came past Philipsen at the intermediate sprint, but he looked relatively on point as well.
I think he might have beaten Philipsen.
Oh,
and Philipsen just didn't come back in time because Philipsen's got 63 points, which suggests he took 13 at the IS.
And it's 2017, 15, 13.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, like the ISs are important to contest. They're important to consistently be in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the final stage positions that are very, very important.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter in the end what when you see this, we get to the end of the stage results, the IS is not the be-all and end-all, but clearly this is why I changed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, LRCP preview, Tour de France preview listeners. I did some reflection. No, did I pick Philipsen for green?
No.
Yeah,
you picked Tim Merlier for green.
No.
I don't know who you picked for green. I don't remember.
No, I'm not that.
You definitely did not pick Milan. I think you might have picked Merlier.
Anyway, I did some reflection. I thought about it more and I became very, very convinced. And you know why? It's because I saw the Alpecin train, which in my defense was not announced. So we should mention it. The Alpecin train and team was not announced before the preview.
Mm-hmm.
This train is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Ricard, Vermeersch, Verstringer, who's another Urukai replacement, Dillier. Then you have Van der Poel, and Rudolph wouldn't say this morning, but they're using Van der Poel as the setup at 700, 800, and Groves as the final lead-out man. That's ridiculous. And they saw that from Kerner Brussel Kerner this year. If you have Groves launch Philipsen on the barrier at high speed, he cannot lose pretty much, except maybe to a Merlier jumping early. But
or Merlier in his wheel also has an opportunity, I think.
He has a chance, but dropping it at 100. Anyway, that I was like, wow. And Philipsen's consistent. He's going to go for the points. And indeed, he's up there at the IS. If the peloton stops after the intermediate sprint, Vercher goes again, starts a new breakaway with Benjamin Thomas.
Without Le Beret. So the guy you picked for your Velo games got 0 points today because he got caught before the amount of kilometers you have to be in the breakaway. I chose Gachignard, which didn't get in the breakaway, but clearly a good decision because he didn't waste energy today, so he can go in the breakaway tomorrow. That's the idea behind Gachignard.
Maybe, yeah. I was like, okay, director, you got to be screaming for some TV time. Come on. This is where Simon Yates joins Lenny Martinez in having a horror last 90 minutes. They have a horror last 90 minutes. He has a rear flat.
Yeah.
As it's about to kick off on the crosswinds, just comes back in the convoy. He then gets back. There was some crosswind nervousness. He's in the front, drops after that, comes back again, drops again, and he eventually, Simon and Adam Yates both lose 6 minutes today. 6 minutes. They're dropping in the positioning fight before possible echelons, Benji. There's guys dropping.
Yep.
That's how hard they're pushing on the flat today.
And we saw that because even riders like Jasper Stuyven, who are strongglers, you see that they're suffering trying to keep their position at the front. You see that. So then you can already guess how much harder these lower kg riders are suffering. Because at the end of the day, when it's on the flat, it's not about watt per kilo. It's about your absolute watts. And those lighter riders cannot push the same absolute watts as the big guns can do.
Especially if they're not an aero bullet like Remco or Vingegaard are quite aero. The Yates brothers, the Lennys, traditional Sepp Kuses of the world.
Yeah.
You know, they're sitting up in a more traditional, relaxed way and they lose time.
That breakaway gets a bit of a gap, and we see the fight on the epic Mont Cassel. I think that's the same climb where Magnus Kort, I think, a couple of years ago at the Tour de France tried to get KOM points. Might be wrong, might not be wrong, doesn't matter.
It's in the Quatre Jours de Dunkirk every year. There's 4 days, which is 6 days of Dunkirk to have the Mont Cassel finish.
And on the Mont Cassel, we have a fight between Thomas and Vercher for the KOM points, and Thomas in the last corner already kind of closes the door, but I was like, okay, it's not completely closing the door. Okay, I'm okay with it. Maybe on the line, We see them both sprinting side by side on the cobbles. We see their wheels kind of going left and right because cobbles are not necessarily the ideal terrain to sprint on. Spoilers. And we see Verchet being in front. Thomas bike throws to try and get past him on the line. And in doing so, loses complete control. It hits the deck, crashes Verchet in the process. They're both on the floor. 20 seconds behind them is the peloton storming up this climb. 17 motorbikes on the screen at the moment. They're trying to get through, trying to get out of the way, etc. Verchet was clearly angry at Benjamin and Thomas. In my honest opinion, on that finish line, that bike throw, I don't think Benjamin and Thomas did anything wrong.
I think he just tries to bike throw. His rear tire hits a cobble at a funny angle and it bucks his bike. And we don't often have sprints on a cobble section.
Yeah.
What cobble race finishes with, except for the Mocasel finish?
Old Nokere Koersen.
Yeah. So maybe Tim Merlier wouldn't have crashed in that situation, but yeah, it was a mistake. It was strange. And then that's the last breakaway. We see Jonas Vingegaard come to the top of the KOM afterwards and take, or the next climb, take maximum points. And so Vingegaard was clearly trying to stay in position all day. He's looking around, where's my team to lead this descent? Benoit comes back up. And now the nervousness just continues with a constant fight. Well, not really a fight, I would say. Like, all the teams, UA on the left side. Visma, Trek with Scoins, Alpecin with Dillier and Verstringer.
Bora's still active, in my opinion.
Bora never really got to the front and stayed there.
They didn't stay there, but they were at the front a few times. In the last 25 kilometers, I saw them moving up, trying to take position across certain teams, across Visma, etc. But they kept losing that position. And that's where the problem lied when it comes to Red Bull Bora in this final. But we get to this segment. We clearly see that some teams have a plan here in the last 20 kilometers. With about 16, 17 kilometers to go, Simon Yates off the back. I see Visma going to the front. Immediately think, okay, they're trying to drop Simon Yates. That's not the truth. The reality is that they see something potentially happening after the next corner. So they're sprinting to that corner. Visma Leasebike setting it up. We get past the corner. Jonas Vingegaard hits the front and he splits the peloton. I've got to say, that was pretty epic. I won't lie. Seeing Jonas Vingegaard, the second favorite of this Tour de France, going to the front, the rider that 5 years ago, well, I'd say 3 years ago, he isn't that old either. You'd classify as like one of the more pure climbers in the peloton. This dude splitting the peloton right there. You got to be pretty bloody strong for that. And it's splitting in a point where it's not just 10 riders, 10 riders, 10 riders. It's a peloton in two, straight up in two. And we start counting. Who's at the front? Pogacar was in a good position in the run-up to this, so most likely not behind. No, he's there. He's got teammates in the likes of Wellens. So Pogacar's fine. Visma would have liked to see Pogacar off the back, I think, at that point, but did not happen. But we start thinking, okay, who's the other GC riders in this race? We've got Remco Evenepoel. I don't see no golden helmet. I don't see a single Soudal Quickstep. Tim Merlier is also not there. Then I look, Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. I don't see many of those in that group. I don't see their sprinters. I don't see their GC riders. Roglic and Lipovic also together with Remco in the second part of the peloton. On top of that, number 2 from UAE, Joao Almeida, also in the second group of the peloton. And then when it comes to the sprinters, we said Merlier's not there. Where's Little Trek? There's one rider, Stuyven. He's not their sprinter. Milan is also behind. Jordi Meus is also behind. So it suddenly creates quite an incentive from riders in that front peloton to keep on pacing. Because especially Alpecin.
It's the perfect composition to stay away because you have the strongest rouleur squad with their sprinter, with the 2 sprint favorites not there. Alpecin do not care if UnoX maybe have some strong guys left there at the end.
Yeah.
They care Milan and Merlier are not there. If they're not there, Philipsen is going to win the sprint and is the quickest. The GC guys, Enric Mas makes it with Ivan Garcia Cortina and Oliveira. Johannesson for UnoX makes it. Visma make it with Jorgensen and Vingegaard. Poggy's got Vellens there. And then there's also, I don't know, Ben O'Connor, for example. But they sort of save for... In fact, I actually don't know why the Jayco guys weren't pulling, because I thought Groenewegen was there, but he wasn't.
He wasn't. It was Mezgets.
So why was Mezgets just sitting on the back? Anyway.
Well, they weren't pulling because they maybe wanted Groenewegen to come back.
Okay, but...
You could go for that.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Verkelen's there. So you have all these GC guys who think, okay, if I just roll through, and it's also the most efficient to roll through in this echelon,
Yeah.
and I can take time on Remco and Almeida, I'm going to do it. If I just have to work for 10Ks or do a bit of work for 10Ks, you have to do it. And that's what these teams do. They put Affini to pace. They put Valens to pace. They put
Garcia Cortina
Cortina to ride.
For Mas, who Movistar did a pretty good job today. Even when it comes to positioning early on in the stage, Nelson Oliveira and Garcia Cortina were positioning Mas relatively perfectly in this stage, I would say. There were moments where they weren't able to keep them at the front, but you have to choose your moments. And for the most important moments, Movistar was in position they made the echelon.
Movistar were very, very, very good. For the right corner, they were there with 3 guys.
Now, we said Alpesen's there with Philipsen. Binyam is also there as a sprinter. So those are 2 pretty fast men in that front group. And I'm starting to think, okay, a lot of incentive to see this peloton going. We see that. We see that incentive on our screen. You said it. All these teams are putting riders to pace. And Affini looked like he was ordering his coffin already because that man looked like he was dead, but still pulling. And we see Alpecin also pulling a lot, but there's some change in the last 15 kilometers. Of course, the echelon started, etc. Alpecin riding like crazy to keep it going, including Van der Poel, including Groves turning, the sprinters turning a little bit as well. But with about, I don't know what kilometer, maybe 9-8 kilometers to go, we see 2 Alpecin riders going off the front, a third Alpecin rider talking to his radio 5 meters behind, with a small gap on the other part of the group, but not with those first 2 riders of Alpecin. And those 2 Alpecin riders, including Mathieu van der Poel, I'm pretty sure, start pulling. And we see a gap open up between those 3 riders and the peloton behind. What do you think was happening?
So for the sprinters team like Alpecin, they don't care if they win by 10 seconds, 30 seconds, or a minute. Once the gap got to 30 seconds, Alpecin change from pull this gap open mode to we need to make sure everyone else is doing their fair share of work and we make sure we win this sprint by still having a lead out. And they got Murderser was in there. Murderser, Van der Poel, Ricard, Groves, Philipsen, 5 guys.
Yep.
So they switched to that mode. Bernard's not going to pull. Vingegaard's behind. And then Velens goes across, sits. He's not going to pull. Pogacar's behind. And then X or Jorgensen closes it. And it starts going. But we were saying, oh, what are they doing? They're messing about. But then you look behind Benji. Broe were pulling with a Van Dijk and maybe a Pithy. I see one of the Van Dijks or whoever it was off and gone.
Yeah.
Meus and Van Poppel are not pulling. Trek are pulling with 1. And they were pulling. So you've got basically 3 guys behind who weren't the strongest in the first place, pulling against Ricard, Affini, Garcia Cortina, Van der Poel, Pogacar himself, Vingegaard himself. Yeah. Like, there's way more guys that were pulling in Group 1 because also, like, EF, they got Vandenberg up there with Sweeney. They're not going to pull. They were blocking Group 2. They're happy with this situation. You know, they got a chance to sprint for a Tour de France win. And it comes back together, starts pulling again. The gap goes to 40 seconds.
Well, I mean, the front group comes back together, not all 2 pelotons.
Yeah, the front group comes back together after that little Alpecin foray. And then in the last 5Ks, unfortunately, there's a crash. Tudor rider comes across. He then hits Vandenberg. Vandenberg goes down. He doesn't care about the 5K rule. Thankfully, there's a 5K rule today. He doesn't care. He wanted to sprint for the win. Yeah. Gone. O'Connor down. He gets the same time, but never ideal to crash after especially making the first echelon. It's good for him.
Yeah.
Caden Groves, full, what's it called? A nollie in skateboarding. Tony Hawk Pro Skater on what's the old portable PlayStation thing from like 20 years ago?
PSP.
Tony Hawk Pro Skater was goated. A nollie is when you like go on the front.
Oh, an ollie. No, a nollie.
Hold on.
An ollie exists. Not sure a nollie exists.
Yeah, he did a nollie. Yeah, so
a nollie or an ollie?
Nollie. It's a nollie.
What's the difference?
It's a nose ollie.
Oh yeah,
and he fully does it. He does it on the front wheel and then hops over his fallen Australian compatriot, and Vandenberg. And I'm like, fuck. I was beginning to think a late attacker was going to win, Benji. Here's why. Alpecin are losing control a little bit. Poggy's just got Wellens.
Yeah.
Visma got no sprinter. X have numbers, strong guys, but not the quickest sprinter. I was expecting Jonas Abrahamsen flyer because I thought that was their best chance to win.
Did we not see a move by Jorgensen at some point in this moment?
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the most vibrant move. There was no real separation because too many people jumped to his wheel. But he definitely tried something there. But you said it. Groves was off the back at this point. I'm like, okay, Groves is gone, right? We get a bit later in the last 2 kilometers. Obviously, that crash was already in the last 2 kilometers. But with about 2 kilometers to go, we see the Alpecin train on the left side, the Uno X train, very strong on the right side of the road with 4 riders. Abrahamsen, Fredheim, Weidenskjold, and so forth. Johannessen there too. So 4 strong riders. I'm like, okay, it's between these 2 trains. Biniam doesn't have the riders around him to do a lead out, so he's going to try and follow the wheel of someone else. We see those trains lining up, and Groves is right there. He found his way back.
I was like, what the fuck? So Enrique came back quick. I think maybe Garcia Cortina had to wait for him.
Yeah.
And you know that like Movistar with they're a classic traditional team. They don't give a shit about a top 3 stage result. Movistar are a GC team.
Yeah.
And they probably had Garcia Cortina probably had to do a little bit of work to bring Enrique back. But Groves is right there. Lead out starts. Uno X set up the full train. They got Johannessen there. Then they're going to go Fredheim for Warnskold. Abrahamsen, there's a corner. I was like, let that wheel go. They don't. Abrahamsen has it. They always go early Uno X. Strong train, but I don't think they use them the best because Alpecin just freeload. The Alpecin just freeload off Abrahamsen and then 800. It's a reduced group. Yeah. So, like, you can't box in another lead out on this wide road at not a K to go. And Alpecin, after Abrahamsen pulls off, Rickard just opens up and washes over them.
But I want to bring it to Uno X here because during Rickard opening it up on the left side of the road for us, when we're looking at the screen, we see Abrahamsen pulling off, and then Fredheim doesn't really know what to do, and he starts talking to Weidenskjold, and they keep talking to each other for the next, I swear, 300 meters they're talking to each other.
He should have done lead up.
They're watching a full movie in these 3 minutes.
I really was seeing it in the women's peloton. It's what Cavendish said. He's like, if I'm the quickest or equal quickest sprinter and I have the best lead out and it drops me at 150 to go fresh without fighting, I will win. So just fighting for my wheel is a futile endeavor. And the only way for Warnskold to win is somehow Fredheim crosses Van der Poel, who didn't look... I wouldn't say I was that impressed by Van der Poel's 2 lead-outs today. He did his job, but it wasn't like a spectacular bit of work. I would say Groves and Rickard were equally as good.
Yes.
Chris Neylands launches at 400 on a late flyer on the other side of the road. They ignore him. Groves does his lead-out. Philipsen's there. Warnskold and Binny's in the wheel, and Philipsen wins by 2 bike lengths. So... yeah, the only way to win was someone else doing their lead out. I mean, at the end of the day, once we saw Philipsen, once this echelon was created with the Alpecin Urukai around him, I couldn't see any other winner, really.
Talking about Urukai, I also feel like we can expand the definition from just Alpecin, between brackets, NPCs being sent to Paris-Roubaix and then suddenly performing very strong. I'm sorry, but Emil Verschling has had a fantastic season. He's climbing very well. Got, I think, top 15, maybe 16th in the mountain time trial of Swiss. Then in LBL, got a top 15 as well. But I did not necessarily expect him to be the guy that goes to the front of the peloton and keeps Alpecin at the front between kilometer 40 and 20. That is strong.
Yeah. They just make him different at Alpecin. Yep. Like, they're just going to, they'll lose riders next year who go to other teams, and they're going to bring in Center Ascensions and Center.
It's going to be Henry Ulich that saps up to a roll line, etc. It's going to keep
Center Romain, like these guys, they'll just do it. So, and that's how they work with their budget, and it works. I mean, they win again.
But if they find out that they can climb,
oh yeah, Emil Verstringer, he got to stop climbing so well because then they'll cut his contract. So, they win again. Philipsen's 10th Tour de France stage win. It's impressive. And you can say, okay, is he quicker than Merlier and Milan in a straight line? No. But as a unit in that structure, not missing opportunities.
Yep.
Like Alpecin don't miss. They didn't miss in Brittany stage 3 in 2021. They don't miss today. And that's also a skill. Merlier and Quickstep weren't in position. To be honest, Little Trek have no excuse. There's no excuse for Trek only getting one rider in this echelon.
Yeah.
They rode with Simmons, I grant you, but that team has firepower. they should be in better position. I mean, this is also, with all due respect, 40 guys made the front echelon,
including O'Connor.
Including
No offense to Ben,
including Joseph Blackmore, including
Enrique Mas,
including Nicholas Merkel, and to make it with one, and you can't say, oh, Iceland Turnison, he does it himself. Yep. Ballerini does it himself, so
but
that's poor.
If we then look at the whole grand scheme of things, yes, we see Little Trek missing that front group. They can't sprint for the victory. They also got Scalemoser, who I think got involved with a crash, but we didn't see him crash. But
yeah, so Plappy had a flyer or a newsletter leaflet in his drivetrain that, because we could see the helicopter of the corner, we saw Soler coming through and then slow. Like, someone's crashed or something, and the building's blocking it. And Plapp was definitely held up, but maybe Scalemoser was too, Benji.
I feel like yes, because then a teammate brought Scalemoser back to that part of the peloton, but I'd expect, based on the fact that Stuyven is the only Little Trek rider up there in the fast peloton, that Scalemoser is in the second one. And at what point does a GC team or a team with a GC rider switch from protecting their lead out in the second peloton to trying to get their GC rider as close as possible to the front group? Because that same exact story goes to Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe and Soudal Quickstep as well in this. Because if we take a look at those two teams, sorry, but Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, what Van Poppel and Meus did at the finish line, that is insane to me.
So yeah, I'll do the results. Philipsen wins ahead of Biniam Girmay, Varensgold third, Turgis fourth. Binny's actually goes into the white jersey, Benji. He's that young still. The green jersey winner of last year. And not just sharing, he goes into the white jersey. It's crazy. Varensgold third, Turgis fourth, Trentin fifth. I gotta say, I think like it's a very MLB reference, but yeah, back in an old elite 99th percentile pitcher who is like still got control and hasn't been injured at 40 years old, can still pitch. These old classics dogs, they know where to be. Trentin knew where to be, and he's there, and he comes fifth at, what is he, 36? And he's 35. Tyenberg, he was in the front group with Jorgensen. So I feel like these old classics guys get written off too early. Clement Rousseau, another one, good positioning, sixth. Penway seventh, Jorgensen eighth, Meyerhofer ninth for Tudor. So they sprinted with two, a little bit odd. Samuel Watson 10th, think he got boxed. And then to Benji's point, leading the group behind on 39 seconds, Johnny Milan with DeLee. There was a lead out by Danny Van Poppel for Jordi Meus. I mean...
Bro, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, if you're Roglic...
Or Lipovic seeing that, and I understand. If the echelon is at 50 Ks to go, and the gap is 5 seconds, and you're about to turn into a headwind section, maybe you save the lead out and the sprinter. When this gap normalized at 30 seconds, at 10 Ks to go, this is never coming back. You can limit the damage, but Group 2 was never coming back. And to sprint for 40th place with Roglic and Lipovic, that's village shit. That is absolutely insane to me. Van Poppel and Meus sprinting instead of helping Roglic and Lipovic, not losing as much time, that is ridiculous to me. At least Merlier, who was in that second peloton, had the brains to not be seen sprinting at the front of the peloton there.
He still sprinted.
Did he? No!
Not with full commitment, but sort of, yeah.
There's no points available anyway. Why the fuck are they sprinting?
There's no green jersey points. There's no UCI points. It's like...
disgusting.
They're not even French. Cocard, I'll allow it. By the way, 3 French guys in the top 10. So French guys good in crosswinds. Clement Rousseau, good in crosswinds.
I'm sorry, but you said it already. If you're Roglic, if you're Lipovic, even if you're Remco with Merlier, you got to be a bit unhappy about the fact that not your entire team is helping you when you're 40 seconds behind in an echelon. Because how much time does Remco Evenepoel, Roglic, Lipovic, Almeida lose today? It's about 40 seconds, right?
They lose 39 seconds. That's a lot of time, Benji. 39 seconds.
That is. Remco might not be in yellow after the time trial amount of time.
Probably not. Because what if Poggy takes a few more bonies?
Exactly.
In the next stages 2 and 4. Yeah, and he's on 50 seconds. And like, Quickstep finished with 5 in that group. 5. And I understand when you go into a Grand Tour split ambitions, it's really tricky. Like Van Aert 2022, Tour de France, it's tricky. But once the stage win is gone, then the guys who are sort of there for stage win, like Bert, like Merlier, the deal is they also then have to pull for Remco.
This is inexcusable to me.
And I don't know if they were pulling. They weren't pulling like Affini.
Yeah.
Because Affini gets his ass dropped. Mercer gets dropped. Vellens was nearly getting dropped. They weren't pulling to the point of getting dropped. So if you're Remco, and I saw on Instagram a post of him looking a bit annoyed at the finish, justified.
Should be.
He also wasn't in position.
Yeah, but that's what we said earlier. The fact that he's positioned in the buffer at the back to avoid crashes results in him being in a shit position when echelons kick off. So in a stage like this, you can't afford to be in that safer position at the back. You have to fight for that safe position at the front. And you have to risk crashing doing so. That's the sad reality of the sport, that you have to risk to be able to come out of the stage with no time loss. And he chose the safe option of being with that buffer around him at the back of the peloton, and that's great for not crashing, but it's shit for losing time when it comes to echelons, and losing 40 seconds is part of that.
I mean, he says what we said, Benji. What we said, I'm now seeing an interview from Sportsa. I think there's some riders who, after UAE put the gas at 100, after the intermediate, I think they thought it was no longer going to split. And because he says, we let ourselves be lulled to sleep. I didn't think it was going that fast. Bro. This is on the directors.
Yeah.
The directors of Movistar they said, you put Enric fucking third wheel with 20 Ks to go, 25 Ks to go on, and he has to be. Visma were there, Wellens was there with Poggi.
But how much is that experience in the team car and experience of like a road captain style rider? Because how much is Vervaeke missing in a situation like this?
I'm not sure Vervaeke's solving this, but it's...
Moscon?
You can blame initially, maybe. You can blame initially the director for the pre-stage and in the radio. But then, like you say, an experienced road captain sees Alpecin suddenly with 5 or 6 coming to the front, and they've not been in 5 or 6 in a line before. Sees UAE pushing, sees the drag race, and
Luke Rowe at Team Sky would notice.
Luke Rowe would be like, something's about to kick off.
Yeah.
I don't know why or when. We're going to the front. And that didn't happen with Remco and Merlier, and they lose time and the chance to win the stage. So, the GC gaps, Almeida lose and Remco lose 40 seconds, as well as, I'll go to their group. Roglic loses 40 seconds, Lipovic as well, Buitrago, Carlos Rodriguez, Oscar Onley, Felix Gol. I mean, Felix Gol on 40 seconds, I think they'll take it, frankly. Could be worse. Van Eytveld.
That man has not made the first echelon at some point in his life.
These poor guys, the Crosswinds have been chasing them around in the desert and now here. Steph Kras.
But 2 riders lost more. The collective Yates family loses more than 10 minutes today.
Yep, Yates brothers lose 6 minutes on average. Aina Rubio, 5 minutes. Christian Rodriguez, 5 minutes. Agita, Gregoire, Stora, Dunbar lose 5 minutes.
Stora was struggling.
Yeah, so the guys who were Michael Woods, 6:30, Alaphilippe, 6:30. I don't like that.
I don't care. Alaphilippe. He did look like he dropped because he was fully gassed.
Yeah, that's the thing.
The other reason, if I just look at the time gap, I don't care about an Alaphilippe style rider losing that time because I don't want him to go for GC. So it's more that the fact that he dropped looking fully gassed, that's my issue with Alaphilippe today.
Anyway, Lenny comes in alone on 9:11 today. Yeah, not good for Lenny. Tomorrow's stage, finishing from starting in Le Vent-Planck, finishing in Blois-sur-Mer, long stage, 210 kilometers. It'll be nervous again. And tomorrow we have hills, so it's going to be nervous, crosswinds. It's a harder stage.
Do we know why Jorgensen sprinted at the finish line?
UCI points.
That would be an epic reason.
Yeah, KOM. Oh, I don't know. 209 Ks. We have 2 category 3s, category 4, but they're much more pivotal tomorrow. So we have rolling hills, and then the Côte de Haute Pichot, 1.1 Ks, 9%. That's with 30 Ks to go the crest. Then 20 Ks, more or less, of flat. downhill, then 1.1k is 9.4%, the Côte de Saint-Etienne or more, and then straight into another Côte de Treux, 800 meters, 8%, then another short descent, and then a more gradual climb to the finish, like 500 meters, 6%, and it's flat at the top. I mean, the breakaway has a bigger chance tomorrow, Benji, because the yellow jersey's not on offer. Romain Gregoire is on 5 minutes. Alaphilippe's on 6 minutes. Maybe it was a masterful
The Yates brothers.
Simon Yates. Maybe it was a masterful gambit from Alaphilippe to get in the break.
How much does the effort of today of every domestique fighting for their lives to keep their leader in the first position, how much does that affect stage 2 already?
To me, this affects stage 2 a lot. The Thibaut Naesen crashed.
Yeah.
If you're Trek, you can't pull, right? No way you pull. For Milan.
You can hedge, eh? You can put Simmons in the breakaway instead of pulling, therefore forcing other teams to pull nice to the finish line.
Yeah.
That's the way to work, I think.
I think Naesen crashing and them getting rolled in the wind today makes Trek a bit more gun shy tomorrow. I think Alpecin will pull, should pull for Van der Poel, but if he looked a bit suspect today, Benji, is he confident he can win? I think the break's got a big chance. Who's controlling? Laurence got dropped in the crosswinds today.
Well, Ineos wasn't going to... Laurence is the kind of rider where you don't pull for anyway. You have him there just in case, and then he tries to compete for it. So Alpecin was the team I look at on a stage like this to do that pulling. And I got to say, I'm still confident they will, but I'm struggling a bit when I'm looking at the rest of the start list, looking for those riders that will also be pulling with them.
So Luke's saying Van der Poel wants yellow.
From his teammate. I agree. I think Alpecin will definitely pull. I have no doubts about Alpecin pulling on this stage. It's either pulling or putting Van der Poel in the breakaway.
Which he did on stage 2 last year.
Yep. One of the two.
I don't think Alpecin want to pull all day if no one's going to help them. Although...
What else is Sylvain Dillier going to do?
Yeah, Dillier can just control it, right? And he doesn't have to pull all day. He's got to pull for like 90 minutes, and then Visma and UAE are going to drag race, and that just controls the break.
Yeah. Still feeling Peloton for some reason. I think Alpecin's going to control it.
I'm feeling France. I'm feeling Victor Lefebvre vibes stage 2 the other year.
Yeah.
And he made the front echelon today with almost no teammate. I'm going Kevin Vauquelin. He's not the favorite, but this is a good parcours for him. He can sneak away whilst Visma and UAE look at each other if he makes that split. Because, like, Benji, for Remco's record, by the way, he doesn't think this is a sprint. Like, Quickstep should know this ain't going to be a sprint finish.
Oh, you'd hope so. Like, you're looking at the last 3 climbs. We're talking 1.1 kilometer at 9.4% is the third last climb. Then you've got the second last climb being 0.8 kilometers at 8%. And then is the uphill finish line. Like, the combination of those 3 is attack territory. That's terrain on which Van der Poel can make his move, where people respond to that. They'd have to ride it really passively for this to become a group sprint.
I don't see it. The way they're racing is way too aggressive. It's going to kick off. I mean, from the peloton, yeah, I understand that Van der Poel's the favorite, followed by Pogacar, but I'm just feeling some Kevin Vauquelin, so I'm going to go with Vauquelin.
I don't think Visma is going to pull for Wout, though.
Not after today.
Well, today he didn't make the first peloton, but also on top of that, I think he stated before the stage that he was...
You can't be confident. Why would you pull ahead of UAE?
Well, that's the whole point. If you look at this finish line, then you say, okay, it's an opportunity for Pogacar to take bonus seconds. So, if anything, you want the breakaway to win if you're Visma.
I think after today, with the big splits, with the appropriate riders, Gregoire, Alaphilippe losing time, I think the breakaway fight will be bigger than I initially expected. It will really depend on the appetite of Alpecin. If Alpecin do not commit to controlling, the breakaway can win this stage, especially as it's not an HC climb.
Yeah.
Like, they don't need to start that last 10Ks with a huge gap. 1 minute could be enough.
If Peloton, I stick with my guns, Pogacar.
Okay. Solo or sprint?
Sprint. I don't expect him to drop everybody.
And then,
I am a bit worried about positioning for Remco, which was a problem.
Because it's also, Benji, it's flat into that 1K climb.
So you're
It's
going to have the fight when it
it'll
comes
be
to
a
teams
full
trying to
drag
position
race.
their GC rider. I am a little bit worried there, but I do expect him to make it in this stage for some reason. I am, if it goes breakaway, ooh. Because you've got Volcaland from breakaway, right?
No, he's taking yellow tomorrow from the peloton.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm saying I'm saying there's Visma, UA, Vanderpool, and he does a Lefay attack.
Oh, okay. That's fair. So you don't believe in the breakaway winning?
Oh, I think it's like 30%.
Okay.
And then you have to pick out Filippo Gregoire.
Yeah, I would have Gregoire from breakaway, but I'm going for Pogacar from peloton.
Fair enough. Yeah, breakaway has a chance. I'm keen to watch the start of this stage, and then maybe if there's wind, I don't know, I haven't checked, but 210Ks, that's a long-ass stage, so it's a hard one. Already guys struggling today after a hard stage on the pedals. Great start to the tour. Thankfully, I was glad there was echelons. It made the finish maybe a bit safer. And tomorrow it's gonna kick off again. I think we're going to see GC gaps again.
Yeah.
And Remco's got to be in position, Benji, or he's going to lose more time.
Yep. Same for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe.
Yep. Okay, thanks for listening as always. Thanks for joining Cycling, and we'll see you maybe with the watch along live on YouTube tomorrow during the last hour and a half of the stage. Until then, ciao, 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 ciao.